So look, this perfect pitch thing, I'm doing it for 30 days. We're on day 17. I've noticed a few changes. I've noticed that there is 100%, without doubt in my mind, there are differences between each note on the piano. And I'm using an electric keyboard, which I would argue could be in some ways harder to identify these different tone colors on. But at the same time, a lot of perfect pitch programs that do supposedly work will say, well, you need to use a real acoustic piano. So I'm using sampled sounds for this particular thing. For a lot of the other stuff I do, like the Full House Ear Training course, you'll notice the piano sounds different. It's a real piano in a lot of cases, but I will go back and forth. Sometimes I'll use a real piano. Sometimes I'll use a digital piano. It really just depends on what I want to accomplish. If I want a consistent sound, I'm going with a digital piano. But if we're trying to get to more advanced topics where we're trying to develop the ear more completely, then I'll move to the acoustic piano so we get more of the overtones. So, is this working? I don't know. I can tell you that, yeah, there's a difference between each tone. Can I tell you that everybody's going to be able to hear this? I don't know, you know, but my goal with this is to put 30 days of dedicated effort into what I'm doing here. And I want to see what type of results I get after those 30 days. Now, when the 30 days are up, because this is sort of what I do for a living, I help you develop your ear. I mean, that's really what I have decided brings me a lot of fulfillment. I like teaching music theory. I like teaching ear training. And I think I would be amiss not to include a little bit of perfect pitch training in the process. So that is what I am doing here. I'm trying to see, can perfect pitch be developed? And if it can I help you? And it's going to be free because I honestly think the more people that have perfect pitch, the better the outcomes for everybody. Because once you have perfect pitch, that's not the end of the road, you know? Perfect pitch is great, but I talked about this yesterday. I can't think of very many instances where I was performing or composing or doing anything else where I thought it sure would be nice to have perfect pitch. When I was younger, yeah, it was kind of a cool technique. It was almost like a party trick. It'd be so fun to be able to say, that's a C, that's an E flat. Look, I have this ability to pick notes out of the air. But the more I have worked in music and become involved in music and arranged pieces and composed pieces and worked with others and, just performed in ensembles, I've realized perfect pitch is fine. Great if you have it, great if you can develop it. But I think relative pitch is just as powerful. And in some ways, maybe it's more powerful because you have that instant recognition of relationships, whereas perfect pitch is like a laser. You go in and you say, I know what that note is. And that's great. But since I don't have perfect pitch, I don't know how people with perfect pitch experience music, but I'm pretty happy with relative pitch. Having said that, I think we're onto something here. So we're going to do some more exercises. I don't know what we're doing because today's very much experimental for me. I'm just going to play around with the piano. Sometimes I'll talk to you, sometimes I won't. And I'm going to do things that allow me to get closer to hearing the notes that I'm trying to hear. And I will explain things as we go. So I'm going to start with the B flat, C, D, and E. Those are the only notes we're working on right now. I'm keeping it limited. I do believe that having more notes at your disposal might actually be a better technique from the beginning. It's not like with relative pitch. With relative pitch, if you get all the notes at once, it's overwhelming. If you have to learn all the intervals at once, that's a little bit much. But with perfect pitch, maybe more is better. But still, I'm going with a theory, and we're gradually adding notes to see how every time I add a new note, how does it change the previous notes I've sort of learned? So there, what note is that? Like, this sounds so distinct to me that I went and checked my volume because it just sounds so soft and muted. And I know when I go to the C now, what used to be, when I would listen to a C before, I used to hear it as very dull, very clear. And now I hear it as a little bit agitated, to be honest. And I hear it compared to the B flat. There's a very distinct difference in tone there. Okay, you know what? This is kind of cool. Day 17. This is a day where I am positive there's differences. I don't even want to describe it anymore. I'm just hearing the differences. Doesn't even matter what the notes are. You know, we assume the goal is to be able to identify these pitches. And so we naturally feel like we need to name the pitches and we need to be right, but I don't think that's correct. I don't think you need to sit here at a piano, choose two notes, and constantly say C or D, C or D, and then add another one, C, D, or E, and then add another one, C, D, E, or B flat. I don't think that's what actually trains the ability. I think what you first have to do is simply say, I'm hearing differences between these tones. I don't know what they are. And you have to turn off the relative pitch because the moment you know one tone, if you have a really good relative pitch like I do, then you immediately say minor third, major third, perfect fourth. You hear the relationships and then you can't not know what the note is. So, in a way, I have to compartmentalize and turn off my relative pitch to hear perfect pitch. And I think that that could be part of the reason why perfect pitch is so hard to develop because most people that want to develop it, they don't have it from birth. They develop it later in life and they've already done a certain amount of ear training. So they've already been taught to listen for something different than what perfect pitch provides. So the first step I actually think as I'm going through this is to break it down and just hear a difference between the notes. If you can hear a difference between the notes, I think you're on the right track. All right, so I'm going to keep doing this. I actually call this the dipping exercise because we keep dipping back to B flat. Okay, I'm going to play a B flat, a C, a D, or an E, along with one other note. We're going to do it melodically first. I want you to tell me what note you think you're hearing. B flat, C, D, or E. Second note was B flat. First note was E. First note was E. I messed up there. There's actually a C and a B flat. B flat is the second note. D is the first note. Now I'm going to play them harmonically. You don't have to identify if it's a lower or higher note because that's not really perfect pitch. We only care about if you get the note right. So what note do you hear in there? Your options are B flat, C, D, or E. The other note is some other note. It's not B flat, C, D, or E. You don't have to name that one. We're just trying to name the focus pitches right now. B flat, C, D, or E. D. C. B flat. D. E. B flat. All right, now let's go back to just listening to the colors. There's your B flat. Okay, now we're going to do something different. I don't want you to do, no, I don't want you to use relative pitch at all here. Okay, I'm going to play a sequence of notes. It's going to include the notes B flat, C, D, and E. But let's see, what melody are we going to do here? I like this one better. All right, so we're going to use this. And then I'm going to wait a moment. So the notes are E, C, D. Oh, we're going to do it this way. E, C, B flat, D. E, C, B flat, D. And then I'm going to wait a few seconds. I'm going to play a note. And you just identify the note I played, not by relative pitch, but by recognizing the note that sounds similar to one of the notes I just played. You'll see how this works. All right, here we go. B flat. E. D. C. B flat. D. B flat. D. C. Now one more thing, and then we're done for today. I'm going to do the same thing, but now I'm going to ask you to either sing or audiate a particular note. And then I'll give you a few seconds and I'll play it. Audiate B flat. Audiate D. Audiate D again. E. Audiate C. And don't try and do it by listening to the pattern. Try and do it by feeling the C. Notice all these Cs? Octaves? There's something similar about them. Try and audiate them based on that. But if you end up doing it based on, okay, C was the third note or the second note, and so I remember the second note and then you replay it, I think that's actually okay for now. D. B flat. C. Okay, so that is going to be all we're going to do today. So the only thing I'm going to just end with here is, the whole thing with ear training. We want fast results, you want to get in, you want to get out, but there's no real quick fix to ear training. And I think it's really important to first kind of have a framework to go off of. Why are you trying to develop your ear? Like, what is it that you want to achieve through this ear training? Is it going to help you become a better performer? You know, one of the things about that is we often think that ear training isn't really all that necessary, and that we can learn everything we need to learn by learning to play our instrument. But the more you develop your ear, the more you start to understand how ear training is fundamental to everything we do in music. You need to be able to hear clearly what's going on. It'll just make you a better performer. It'll make listening to music more enjoyable. It'll make you a better composer. It's fundamental. So we'll talk more about that at some point, but we'll continue this perfect pitch training tomorrow. I personally believe that there's a little bit of a breakthrough. And when on day 17, specifically today, I heard things very differently. After 30 days, I'm going to continue to do this. Whether or not I do it daily, I'm not sure, but I'll continue to update you at least weekly. Maybe I'll come in and I'll give you kind of a update on what I've been working on. I'll give you some exercises, and we'll keep doing this until I decide that either I have perfect pitch or I'm bored with it. Okay. So we'll keep doing that. And in the meantime, let me know how you're doing with all this.